created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
In today's program, we are talking about one of the greatest Italian opera composers. Many people may know him only because of Lucia di Lammermoor, but there is more about this composer than just Lucia. You may also know him because of La Fille du Régiment or maybe the L'Elisir d'Amore, which, of course, the three that I have just mentioned are very great operas. However, it doesn't mean that there is all that about Gaetano. That is all that we can say about Gaetano Donizetti. Maestro Gaetano Donizetti lived or started his career a little after Gioacchino Rossini and a little before Giuseppe Verdi, and that puts him in a very special circumstance because people tend to remember very well Rossini, people tend to remember very well Giuseppe Verdi, but for some reason Donizetti gets caught somewhere in between. And that will be my point today. I think that has been very unfair because people think of Rossini and think of Il Barbiere di Siviglia or think of Il Barbiere di Siviglia, and that's all they need to know. And the Figaro, and when people think about Maestro Verdi, people can think of La Traviata, and that's what they can think of. But whenever people think of Lucia di Lammermoor, all they think about is just Lucia, as it has never ever been written by the genius that was Gaetano Donizetti. We will be talking about that in today's program, and for that purpose, as you may well recall, this is our series where we are having ChatGPT in its version 3.5 telling us what is it that it can share with us in order to understand or to learn more about these given composers. I have shared in the past that mainly the first answer is usually vague and uh, with lots of platitudes. It is going to be the same case today. I prepare the questions and the answers beforehand so that I can keep helping ChatGPT with more questions in order to gain more understanding or correct or go deeper on a given topic that maybe ChatGPT oversaw. And that is going to be the case for today's because one of the first things that I notice is that, well, maybe before I say that, we should also mention, in case you don't know it, the way ChatGPT works is that it is an artificial intelligence that what it does is that it is fed by thousands, if not millions, of sources of information. So it goes there, takes the information, reads, and based on that, it has sort of a library of knowledge. So whenever you have a request, what it does is that it goes to all that has been indexed to that uh, library of knowledge and then provides the result. If you want an essay, it will base its understanding of an essay on what it was fed. When it has to provide a report, it is also going to be basing the result on the findings that it has. What it means is that the capacities, the current capacities of ChatGPT now, as of November 2023, which is the date we are recording this. It's based only in its understanding on the access of reading materials. Based on that, if there are no other authors who have noticed what this program is going to be about the unfairness, on the lack of depth around the composer Gaetano Donizetti, there is no way ChatGPT can understand it because it is basing its understanding on what it actually read. So if no one else talked about it, if there are not sufficient sources to talk about that gap in the understanding of Gaetano, there is no way ChatGPT can make it up. I was also thinking that maybe in the future, maybe by the time, couple of years when you're listening to this program, maybe ChatGPT it will be able to access sources that are not only written but maybe also audios. So when it has also access to audios, it can also infer draw its own conclusions based on that, because that would mean that we can feed into that a number of actual recordings of the given operas to help it draw its own conclusions. I think it would be very interesting to find out what the conclusions are. First of all, the technique of singing has changed throughout the years. So people know that the best singers that we had, the latest ones were in the 1970s. And after those singers, of course, the previous ones, the number of good singers that have been around has been decreasingly, I would say, dramatically. We don't have those, not with that number and not with that level of quality that we used to have. But that could be a second topic, and I wanted to mention it before because one of the reasons why ChatGPT didn't detect that there are not as many sources to find out about Gaetano Donizetti as there are for other composers. It's because it cannot understand it herself. So if you give ChatGPT a number of sources that are plain of that are full of platitudes, what it is going to reproduce is a text full of platitudes because it's understanding that that's how we humans like to have things. So maybe this would also add to the discussion that ChatGPT is essentially biased. Not sure how familiar you are with not only with the ChatGPT, but with the development of the current technologies. But that's one of the main criticisms around ChatGPT, that we are making it biased, provided that we are feeding sources, documents that we prepared ourselves and we ourselves are biased. So it inherits the same bias. There is also a more popular way of saying it, monkey, monkey see, monkey do. So monkey sees our biased documents, so monkey reproduces our biased documents. Okay, so going back to Maestro Donizetti, since I would like to be sharing with you my rationale and other additional materials of why I say that history of music and biographers have not been fair enough with the very great Maestro Donizetti. I would like to this time change a little the structure of the program. You know that we based it. The main guideline is the content of the responses of ChatGPT, to which I add or correct something. I would like to add three special. I would well, maybe not special, but three passages to provide examples on what I was saying before. Because whenever people think of Maestro Gaetano Donizetti, people think of only funny operas, while from my perspective, and this is what I would like to share today, is that Maestro Gaetano Donizetti is the first composer that brings believable, very profound dramas into the world of opera. We will I know that you will recognize very well at least one of those scenes, but we will go to that in detail. But in order to have time to go to those scenes in detail, we need to go very, very fast on the responses by ChatGPT. And as you know, we have the first 500 words that we ask ChatGPT to provide on a summary of the given composer, and all that is always correct information. So Maestro Donizetti was born in the year 1797, 3 years before November 29, 1797, before the 800s, in Bergamo, Italy. We all know he's an Italian composer. Then there is platitudes and platitudes. We know that he, based on the response by ChatGPT, that he started his school studies at the Lezioni Caritatevoli, also there in Bergamo. He continued his education at the Bologna Conservatory, where he honed his compositional skills and became influenced by the operatic traditions of the time. Of course, by these years, keep in mind that even though Rossini had already started his career, he was not famous then. So at the time Donizetti started learning about music, Rossini wasn't there, but Mozart was. He composed his first opera, Enrico di Borgogna, in 1818, years after Il Barbiere di Siviglia and La Cenerentola. Keep that information in mind. Uh, One reference that we have based on the answer by ChatGPT is his contribution to the bel canto style. Let's keep in mind that bel canto means beautiful singing, but I also wanted to make, because it will be part of our conversation later, that uh, bel canto makes reference, of course, of a beautiful technique for singing, but it does not mean that you have to sing beautiful even when there is drama there, and that is the main lesson that Donizetti teaches us. You may have the greatest technique, the greatest way of saying things as a bel canto singer, but you also need to be able to convey drama. Uh, Very important, and this is one of the reasons I was telling that Donizetti is, for some reason, when people think of Rossini, people know that Rossini was able to compose very rapidly and that he composed a good number of operas in a very short time. And that is the same case for Mozart, when we even call Mozart a genius because he managed to make a good number of compositions, not operas, but also orchestral and piano. But hardly ever people pay attention to the fact that Donizetti was also a very prolific composer. We will see that in a second. And that is also very important because if you notice, we have in around less than 100 years time lapse, we have three very prolific composers that would be Mozart, Rossini, and Donizetti. One of Donizetti's most famous operas is Lucia de Lammermoor. We all know that, blah, 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 blah. He also explored the comedy side in Don Pasquale, yes, but before Don Pasquale, there is also La Fille du Régiment, as we know, and also there was L'Elisir d'Amore. So saying that the comedy or comic side of the opera is only on Pasquale, I think it's a little um, imprecise. But remember, as we just mentioned, that ChatGPT fits on the materials that we provide. So if it found what it thought that it was a reliable source and it only mentions Don Pasquale, well, ChatGPT only mentions Don Pasquale. The composer's career was not without challenges. He faced censorship, we will go back to that, and political pressure in his operatic works, especially in Maria Stuarda. Now there is time for a spoiler. One of the scenes that we are going to talk about in detail is especially for Maria Stuarda, year of composition 1835, which depicted the historical conflict between Mary, Queen of the Scots, and Queen Elizabeth I of England. The opera was initially banned due to its sensitive subject matter. Yeah. Maestro Donizetti ran, as we provided examples before when we mentioned that Mozart himself there to challenge the status quo in a couple of his operas, Le Nozze di Figaro and Don Giovanni, to exemplify. Same case for Maestro Verdi, who would challenge the status quo and bring the topic of royalty. Maybe the most famous censored opera was, of course, the very, very famous Rigoletto, and there is also some censorship in La Traviata, but I will not give more details around that because that is not our topic today. Uh, Tragedy struck Donizetti personally when his wife Virginia Baselli died in 1837, and a year later he lost his three children due to an illness. These personal losses deeply affected him, and his music took on a more introspective and melancholic tone during this period. Of course, we as humans and moreover composers are subject to the experiences they are having in their own lives, and whatever makes them suffer, of course, uh, has an impact in their compositions. Important to mention, we will go back to that also later. 1845, Donizetti suffered a severe mental breakdown, possibly to undiagnosed syphilis, and was confined to an institution in Paris. He spent his remaining years of his life battling mental illness and never composed another opera. Donizetti passed away on April 8, 1848. And then there is a full paragraph of vague platitudes, so let's that would be for the introduction of Donizetti's. Now, you know that we like to mention the good number of operas that these prolific composers have. That is next question for ChatGPT to provide the Donizetti's operas in chronological order. I will read them very rapidly, provided that there are 63 of them listed, the largest list so far in this series of programs. So, number one, Enrico di Borgogna, 1818, Una Follia, 1818 as well. Il Falegname di Livonia, 1819, Zoraida di Granata, 1822, La Tingara, 1822, Chiara e Serafina, 1822. If you notice the year of publishing these operas is the three of them the same year, two for the beginning, for three the same year. That means that he composed average of one opera every 4 months or less, because that is the year of publishment. But remember that this is not like cooking a cake that you just take out of the oven and ready it is. We continue. Chiara e Serafina, 1822. Alfredo il Grande, 1823. L'Agio nell'imbarazzo, 1824. Emilia di Liverpool, 1824. Alajor in Granata, 1826. Elvida, 1826. Le nozze in villa, 1826. Il fortunato inganno, 1827. Una follia. It is mentioned two times. It is 1827, Le convenienze ed inconvenienze teatrali, 1827, Il Giove di Grasso, 1827, Olivo e Pasquale, 1827, Il Diluvio Universale, 1829, Zoraida di Granata, 1829, a revised version, Gabriela di Vergi, 1829, Il Castello di Kenilworth, 1829, La romanziera e l'uomo nero, 1831, Il Paria, 1829, Alina regina di Gioconda, 1829, Francesca di Foix, 1831, La lettera anonima, 1830. We have already mentioned 26 letters, 26 operas, sorry, for 12 years. And it is until the year 1830 that he publishes his, at least his more known from that early period, his most known opera. Of course, we are talking about Anna Bolena. Anna Bolena, which is one of the three queens that we will talk about also a little further. So Anna Bolena 1830 is composed, and you may also have noticed that even though it is a great opera, Bolena is not sung that often. And the reason for not being sung often is that it is much easier to sing La Traviata, being the very, very well-known Traviata, uh, than being the main character, Anna, in Donizetti's opera. Of course, you may contend that I am not saying that La Traviata, the main character, is an easy role to sing. We all know it has its difficulties, but Ana Bolena, it has its particularities that make it, if not impossible, very difficult to sing. We can name very few singers who have taken the challenge of singing it. Of course, we can mention the very great Maria Callas, one of the greatest Anna Bolenas on stage. Of course, we also have John Sutherland, the Australian soprano. Of course, we also have, of course, the very great Turkish soprano Leyla Gencer, who was a specialist in the Donizettian roles. And thanks to her, the world had the opportunity of listening and learning of these many compositions that Donizetti did and that are so very much unknown. Of course, Ana Bolena was also sung by more recent singers, such as we have De Villa, the soprano Mariela De Villa, and other singers. More recently, of course, also the Russian soprano Anna Netrebko. Some people think that her voice and her style is not suited for Donizetti. Well, that has to do with what I think are our own perception of what we say is good and what we say is not. So let's continue with the list. So number 28, Fausta, 1831, Gianni di Parigi, 1831, La Capana Svizzera, 1831, Le Convenienze ed Inconvenienze Teatrali, 1831, also revised version, Il Furioso all'Isola di San Domingo, 1831, Sancha di Castiglia, 1832, La Zingara, 1832 in a revised version, Il Diluvio Universale, another revised version, also 1832, Parisina, 1833, Torquato Tasso, 1833, Gemma di Vergi, 1834, Marino Faliero, 1835, Belisario, 1836, Il Campanello, 1836. And then we have the other of the queens. We have Maria Stuarda, 1835. If you notice, it is 5 years after Anna Bolena. Maria Stuarda is the second of her queens. We will go back to that also. Unfortunately, there are not those many singers who have taken Maria Stuarda. We'll also go there. Then we have the hyper famous, the most well known opera by Donizetti, and I would like to insist it is unfair to know Donizetti only because of La Fille du Régiment, L'Élysée d'Amore, and Lucia di Lammermoor. Lucia de Lammermoor, 1836, 1835, which of course you know because of the La Scena di Follia, that very famous scene where the soprano has to go for a high E or an E flat, if I recall well, of course, full of fiorituri and ornaments. And then again, every soprano wants to be Lucia di Lammermoor. Why not willing to be Lucia di Lammermoor? And that will be another scene that we will be talking about a little further. Continue with the list. Rosmonda d'Inghilterra, 1834. Ugo Conti di Parigi, 1832. Pia de Tolomei, 1837. The third one, the third queen, Roberto de Verot, 1837. Even though we have to mention that don't be mistaken by the name of the opera, because Maestro Donizetti chose to give it the name of the male character, Roberto, but in fact the story is about Elisabetta, so that's why it is called The Third Queen by Maestro Donizetti. That will be 1837. Then Il Duca d'Alba, 1839. Maria de Rudens, 1838. L'Ange de Nisida, it was not completed, 1837. La Fille du Régiment, one of our greatest favorites, 1840. Please keep in mind that it has been mentioned that unfortunately couple of years earlier in 1837 his wife died, and 1838 his three children died, which gave some sort of darkness to the compositions of Maestro Donizetti. But if you pay attention to the list of operas here listed, Pia de Tolomei, Roberto de Verot, Il Duca d'Alba, Maria de Rudens, and later La Fille du Régiment, there is no way we can see where that darkness or solitude of sort of darkness is here in the compositions of Maestro Donizetti. Personally, I do not see the impact. I mean, one of the greatest, most amusing operas ever, La Fille du Régiment, is 1840, couple of years after the death of his three children and wife. Then we go for La Favorite, Keep in mind that La Favorite was written in French, even though it is usually sung also in Italian as La Favorita. Then Les Martyrs, 1840, Le Duc d'Alva, completed by Matteo Salvi in 1840. At this point, maybe you have already noticed that Maestro Donizetti composed in Italian as well as he composed in French. That is the reason why we have names of these operas in Italian, and there are also others that are in French. Then we move on with, after Le Duc d'Albe, we go for La Jolie Fille du Perth, 18. Well, that is also incomplete, but it was completed by Gustave Léonard de Jonsières in the year 1862. We also have Linda di Chamouni, 1842, Maria di Rohan, 1843, Don Pasquale, 1843, Don Sebastian, which was also completed by another composer. It was in this case Eugène Escrive and Gustave Léonard de Jonsières, also year 1843, Caterina Cornaro, 1844, Le Duc d'Alva again, 1845, Imelda de Lambertazzi, which is a revised version of the 1830, and Lange de Nisida. Uh, at this point, maybe we should go back to the fact that it is barely the 1840s and couple of years earlier, Don Pasquale in 1843, that Geniosity, which by the way, the duet between Il Dottore and Don Pasquale is what gave us a wrapping of our previous series. He was writing with that geniosity, but it is said that from the early 1840s, Maestro Donizetti showed a decline in his mental capacities. I would like to bring you to the idea that Maestro Donizetti was a prolific composer, really worked hard his way up. And 1837 he loses his wife, 1838 he loses his children, and in the early 1840s there are signs that he is also losing his mental capacities, sort of a dementia. So, what we can say is that the last 10 years of life of Maestro Donizetti were full of, I would dare to say, sorrow, not only challenges, but I think maybe the worst things that can happen to a human being, losing your family for years later, losing the control of your own mind in dementia. And there are as I read earlier, there's people who say that it was the result of the syphilis. Uh, it is not clear. Uh, his remains would need to be exhumated in order to run medical analysis with the technology that we have now to understand if if there's really traces of the bacteria that maybe once in his blood run to his mind, and that's what depleted his mental capacities. We all know that the medication, that the way to resolve that arrived much later. So I think it is fair to think we cannot be sure that it was actually the syphilis that attacked him, but I think that we can consider if that was not maybe some other bacteria or virus infected him. Other people say that it was only because of the stress. Other people say that maybe it was already inherited from his family. Certain we can be not, but no matter what the source of his illness was, the truth is that in 10 years he loses everything: wife, children, his own mind, and later his life. And even though those challenges of his later life, he gave us the great composition that is Don Pasquale. Of course, I still didn't feel satisfied with what ChatGPT had provided, and so I asked how, if ChatGPT had record or has access to any document talking about Rossini influencing Donizetti. I will not read it because its conclusion is that they really didn't. Donizetti was not really influenced, even though his first successful composition is after Il Barbiere di Siviglia. Most likely their careers were in parallel. Also remember that Rossini's compositions, he stopped composing very early. In the 1830s, Maestro Rossini stopped composing, and in the 1830s, Donizetti still composed over 20 operas. So one of them stopped while the other continued. If you look very deeply into the style of each other, then you will notice that there are no similarities in the styles of the two composers. There are not similarities in the use of the orchestration. There are not similarities in the composition for the voices. There are not similarities in the composition of the arias, on the flow of the action, on the choosing of the librettos, or anything. I have read the partituras from the two composers, and I have not been able to identify somewhere where Donizetti may have borrowed something from Rossini. Well, that was one question worth asking. The other question that I also wanted to ask, and I am skipping completely ChatGPT's answer because it is full of blah 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 blah, and it was unable to provide a yes or a no. Looks like it almost built an answer just to satisfy uh, the need to provide an answer, but it was not conclusive on its side. I would expect it to be more conclusive. It is not. That's why I am giving you my on opinion. I am going to skip to two other questions before we go to the passages that I want to share, because I asked, you know that I like also to ask this question to ChatGPT. I asked about the most difficult areas by Donizetti. This is one of the questions where ChatGPT fails the most. Again, remember, it is not that it is failing because it likes to fail. It fails because it bases its understanding on the library of knowledge that it has access to. So if many people are satisfied with the area à mes amis, it is number one, from La Fille du Régiment, then ChatGPT thinks this is one of the most difficult areas, but it is only because people talk about it, not because it has reviewed and understands where the difficulty of an area resides. So, number one from this list, À mes amis from La Fille du Régiment. We talked about this À mes amis in La Fille du Régiment when we recorded that program. You know that this is truth is this is not something that I like, but this is one of the greatest favorites by people because of the nine high C's by the tenor in À mes amis quel jour de fête. Notice that it is written in French. Dun, dun, da, 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 da. Horrible aria from my perspective. Number two, the mad scene from Lucia di Lammermoor. We were already talking about Lucia. Yes, everybody wants to be Lucia, and it is because of the mad scene, La scène di follia, in Lucia di Lammermoor, which starts with Ardon Vincenzi after Lucia has killed her husband. They just married, and she has just killed her in the night of the wedding. Uh, of course, after the Ardon Vincenzi, then comes the most difficult part by tan 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 tan, and then a horrible mistake, and a mistake that cannot be forgiven because ChatGPT says that it is Casta Diva from Norma. We know that Norma was written by Vincenzo Bellini. So how come that Maestro Bellini in Norma, when we ask about most difficult arias written by Donizetti, were provided an aria from Norma by another composer? Horrible, horrible mistake. Then we have Pour mon âme from La Fille du Régiment, which basically is a repetition from number one, because it is in fact the same aria by Tonio in La Fille du Régiment and the High Seas. So out of four responses in the list by ChatGPT, it has committed a mistake in repeating number four and adding Casta Diva from a different composer. We have Tu che Dio spiegaste l'ali from Lucia di Lammermoor. No, 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 no. It says it is difficult only because it demands emotion, intensity, and vocal virtuosity. That is not true. Tu che Dio spiegaste l'ali is not a virtuosity aria. No. Beautiful aria, but not a virtuosity one, so horrible error here. Prendi per me sei libero from L'Elisir d'Amore. In the role of Nemorino and Adina, Adina is the one who sings this Prendi per me sei libero. So even though it has not does not have a string vocal acrobatics, it is challenging. I would add rather the aria by Norina in Don Pasquale. That is way more difficult than Prendi per me sei libero. So as you notice, the list of these six arias is not only incomplete but mistaken. Poor job, really, really, really poor job. A few anecdotes around Maestro Donizetti. There is an anecdote around Maestro Donizetti and Don Pasquale that says that while he was working on the opera and staying at the Parisian hotel, Donizetti accidentally locked himself out of his room, leaving behind the manuscript. Fearing that someone might have found it and stolen his work, he became so anxious that he broke down the door to retrieve it. The anecdote highlights the composer's dedication to his compositions. Also, keep in mind that Don Pasquale is a little earlier, only a couple years earlier, because his final mental breakdown. In fact, by the time he was composing Don Pasquale, he had already been touched in his mental capacities. From my perspective, this moment of angerness and desperation is not because of what it is said here, just the fear, the natural fear of being stolen, but maybe the reaction of someone who was already losing his mind. The Lost Opera number two, the Lost Opera L'Ange de Nisida, Donizetti's opera was commissioned for the Théâtre de la Renaissance in Paris, but the theater went bankrupt before it could be performed. The work remained unfinished and the score was lost for many years. In the 2018, the score was rediscovered and the opera was finally premiered, allowing audiences to hear a previously lost Donizetti work. Number three, Donizetti's musical jokes. Donizetti had a playful side, enjoyed incorporating musical jokes into his compositions. In the opera Don Pasquale, during the duet Pronta io son, Donizetti added a humorous touch by including a passage with a note so high that it is nearly impossible to sing. It is said to be a wink at the singers and the audience, showcasing his sense of humor. And here I must confess that I cannot recall what note that could be. I think I need to make more digging. I am not sure that it was really ever written because I have Don Pasquale's score and I don't recall that note anywhere. It might just be another error or reference to a note that was later deleted. Donizetti and the French influence. Donizetti's time in Paris had a significant impact on his music. He embraced French opera and incorporated elements from French style into his compositions. In fact, I wanted to make a pause there. If you listen to La Vie du Régiment and listen to the dialogues in French, they are pure jewels. They are in good natural French and they are just great and funny. His ability to blend the Italian and French operatic traditions contributed to his success in Paris and beyond. Anecdote number five, a ghostly opera. While in Vienna, Donizetti claimed that he had composed an opera with the help of a ghost. He said that he was visited by the ghost of famous composer Giuseppe Verdi, who assisted him in creating his opera Maria de Roudans. This story is likely more of a humorous anecdote than a factual account, but it adds a touch of mystique to Donizetti's life. This anecdote is fully wrong because keep in mind that Maestro Verdi was born after Donizetti. Donizetti died around 50 years before. He died around 50 something years before Maestro Verdi. So there is no way Maestro Verdi ghost, even if you believe in ghosts, could have visited him because Maestro Verdi was not a ghost, at least not yet. I also wanted to mention, because I didn't mention it in the program by Maestro Verdi, I mentioned earlier that Rossini, I don't see anywhere where Rossini had influenced Donizetti, but as we are about to go to our three scenes, but I noticed where Donizetti influenced Verdi. And for that purpose, I would like to mention that I have been saying that Donizetti is not only the composer of funny operas such as L'Elisir d'Amore, Le Video Regimante, Don Pasquale, and the composer of Lucia de Lammermoor. What we have is here a very mature composer, a composer who understands, and I go there to compare, who understands the human emotions maybe in the same depth as Maestro Giuseppe Verdi did. And I am saying this because when you pay attention to the duets, the arias, and the ensembles, and the wrapping up of the final scenes of the acts, you notice that he has been building the drama with a very well conceived idea of where he wants to take the drama to. This geniosity we notice in Maestro Giuseppe Verdi. Maestro Giuseppe Verdi accounts for that understanding of drama, but from my perspective, from what I have noticed, studied, and learned, the true starter of the Italian drama is in fact Gaetano Donizetti. He is the first one to build this deep understanding on how the voice has to portray the human emotions as it is going to be the case in all the creations that we have mentioned before. Of course, you can think of a very intimate aria from Maestro Giuseppe Verdi, but notice Donizetti's compositions and find that he also has and he also maybe I think it is unfair to say also because in fact chronologically speaking it is Donizetti who composes first. From my perspective, Verdi feeds lots of his understanding of drama from Donizetti. I am not saying that he copies, that he replicates. What I'm saying is that he gains some of his understanding from one of the greatest composers of his times, Maestro Gaetano Donizetti. If we take that example and we go chronologically, you keep in mind that Anna Bolena is the first one in the order of his three queens. And I also think that ChatGPT should have provided us with a list of the three queens, of the three Donizettian queens, even before I asked, but it didn't. So since I noticed that it didn't, that's why I went ahead and I asked for it. And the three queens, the three roles that every soprano would like to sing, besides, of course, Lucia di Lammermoor, are Anna Bolena, of course, then Maria Stuarda, of course, second queen, and the third queen, Elisabetta. Those are the three Donizettian queens. The three roles are among the most difficult roles ever written for the female voice of a soprano. They need more stamina than they need for Lucia di Lammermoor because in Lucia di Lammermoor, of course, you need that very well uh, developed bel canto technique, but to sing the Three Queens, you also need stamina. You also need to have a voice with enough power so that you can be heard above the orchestra. Because the final scenes of the first and second acts of his Donizetti and Queens are very, very difficult to sing, and as we are going to exemplify now, they are even difficult to sing even before we reach that part. So, um, for that, let's go for Ana Bolena. I am not going to tell you more about what Ana Bolena is about because that would require another 3 hours, and I cannot be speaking for that long. And we don't have the time and the time allotted by the channel in the podcast does not give us that length either. So, but we will record the program on Ana Bolena, of course. But going back, so there is this duet between Anna Bolena and Giovanna. Giovanna is a mezzo soprano. Anna, of course, is a soprano, is the heroic queen, Anna Bolena. If at this point, Anna is very sad. And as she is very sad, and I would like to keep mentioning you full passages around this scene because we are going to notice how Maestro Donizetti manages to tell a complete story around two characters in one of the longest, if not the longest, duets ever written for a soprano and a mezzo soprano. This duet is so long, over 12, 13 minutes of duration, that both the soprano and the mezzo end up uh, completely tired, depleted after this enormous effort. Uh, Also, besides being very long, very complex, part of the complexity resides on the way he builds the drama. We start with an Anna Bolena who is alone, who is sad, who is singing for herself when she says, Dio che mi vedi in core, mi volgo a te, oh Dio, se meritai quest'onta, giudica tu, tu giudica, oh Dio. So she's alone and she's saying, God, you God that can see, that can read in my heart, I am addressing to you, O God of mine. If I deserve this, just you need to judge it. Judge it, O God of mine. Giovanna, who has approached the scene, can see Anna Bolena, and from the distance she says, "Piangi l'afflitta." She is afflicted, of course, referring to Anna Bolena and saying, Anna is afflicted and she is crying, "Piangi l'afflitta." And Anna Bolena asks herself, come ne sosterrò lo sguardo? And how will I manage to look at her? How come sosterrò lo sguardo? Anna continues because she has noticed the presence of Giovanna and says, Assì gli affanni degli infelici aragonesi, inulti esser non deno, e a me terribil pena il tuo rigor destina, ma terribili è troppo, troppo. So Anna has continued with her monologue talking about the situation that is undergoing now. And of course, Giovanna, that continues to see her from a distance, says, O mia regina. Anna says, Se mur a me ritorni non mi vogliasti tu, sorgi, che vego, impallidisci, tremi a me tu rechi nuova sventura forse. When she notices that Giovanna has been listening, she invites her to join her. But adieu, Simur, Anna of course, Giovanna is Giovanna Seymour. Giovanna Seymour, a me ritorni, non mi obliasti tu, you're coming to me, you have not forgotten me. Because at that point in time in the opera, Anna Bolena is in disgrace. Even though she's the queen, she has fallen in disgrace by the orders of her husband, the king. Sorgi che vego, impallidisci, tremi tu, Giovanna, replies, orrenda, estrema, gioia possi recarvi, a no mudite. And this is in this part, this is where the music is gaining more power because the drama, as I was telling you, built to perfection by Maestro Donizetti. Tali son trame ordite che perduta voi siete, ad ogni costi voi franti il re li sciagurati nodi che vi stringono a lui, la vita almeno, se non il regio nome, la vita almen de voi salvate. She's saying that she's bringing really bad news. Perduta voi siete, you are lost because the king wants to kill you. He wants to get rid of the giuramenti. You know that they have a promise before in the religious wedding that they will be together. So those giuramenti, those nozze, have to be broken, and that's what it refers. La vita almeno, se non regio nome, la vita almen de voi salvate. That's because she's inviting her to accept that Anna has been unloyal to the king so that she can save her life, if not her name, as she would be just unfaithful, but at least if she accepts, she will save her life. But Anna says, e come? Spiegati. Giovanni says, in dirlo io tremo, pur dirlo io deggio. Giovanna says, I tremble of just thinking of it, but I have to say it. Il confissarvi rea del regio scioglie e vi sottrage a morte. Exactly what I was mentioning earlier. You have to confess that you were in fact unfaithful to the king. Anna does not agree and says, che dici tu? La sorte che vi persegue, altra non lascia voi mezzo di scampo. E consigliarmel puoi, replies Anna. How can you give me such an advice? Tu, mia Seymour, because to Anna, to the eyes of Anna, Seymour is her friend. How can you dare to suggest such a thing? Giovanna replies, de per pietà. Anna continues, ch'io compri con l'infamia la vita e tu Seymour, tu consigliarmel puoi. And Giovanna continues, e infamia e morte volete voi. And so you prefer to die? O mia regina, you, my queen, o ciel cedete, oh my queen, please accept to do that. Veni consigli il re, veni scongiura la sciagurata che l'amor d'Enrico ha destinata al trono. Because now Giovanna has said that this advice comes because the love of the king, because the king actually has a lover, the king has already decided that his lover is the next queen. And Anna says, e chi è costei? La conosci? Favella, ardire leve di consigliarmi una viltà della regina sua. Parla, chiedessa. And if you notice here, the construction, even though it is sung, it is almost quasi parlato. And it has to be quasi parlato because it has to be natural and it has to convey the emotion of the scene. As I was telling you earlier, the thing around Donizetti is that even though he's part of the bel canto, the beautiful singing, he understands that the voice needs to convey the emotion. So a beautiful sound of Venes congiura la sciagurata che l'amor d'Enrico ha destinata al trono does not make any sense. It has to be sung, it has to be almost quasi parlato or declamato. Venes congiura la sciagurata che l'amor d'Enrico ha destinata al trono. Ah, chi è costei? La conosci? Favella, ardire leve di consigliarmi una viltà della regina sua, parla, chiedessa. So if you notice, the emphasis it has not to be parla chiedessa, it has to carry the emotion of parla chiedessa. And Giovanna, who is that woman who dares to suggest such a thing to the queen? And so Giovanna replies una infelice. Anna replies e tal face a me stessa, because Giovanna says that the woman who is suggesting that is an infelice. But infelice, it's me, replies Anna. Sul suo capo, sul suo capo aggravi un Dio. Again, it has to be the correct emphasis on the expression aggrava un Dio. Il suo braccio punitore. De mi ascolta, de Giovanna stops the expression by Anna, al par del mio sia straziato il vil suo core, sia la spina e la corona ambite al crine. In this part, understanding the need of the drama, Maestro Donizetti has built allegro because it's al par del mio sia straziato il vil suo cor sia la spine la corona ambita al crine. And it is interrupted by Giovanni who says de per pietà m'ascolta. Um, because of the way it is written, much of the drama, of the power of the drama, is built or is carried by the voice of the mezzo. You will notice a little ahead, and as we are running out of time, we are going to read it a little faster. Go for Anna. Sol guancial del regioletto sia la tema ed il sospetto fra lei sorga il reo suo sposo, il mio spettro minaccioso e la scure a me concessa più crudele neghi il re. And Giovanna shouts, ah! E si copre il volto, covers herself. E la scure, Anna insists, e la scure a me concessa più crudele neghi il re, fin la scure a me concessa la neghi il re, sì più crudel di il re, li neghi il re. And this is the part where the mezzo carries most of the drama because after this initial angerness by Anna Bolena, because even though there are ornaments in the last phrase that she sang, si più crudele neghi il re, le neghi il re, even though there are ornaments in that part, it is interrupted and it is slowed down again by Giovanna says. Ah, ria sentenza, io moro. Ah, cessa per pietà, decessa per pietà. Cessa, usually it is changed by the phrase basti, because even though Anna is very upset, now Giovanni is decessa per pietà, basti. Anna understands and says, You che ascolto, así prostrata al tuo piede la traditrice, mia rivale, mia straziata dai rimorsi ed infelice. And Anna replies, Fuggi, fuggi, get out of here, run away from here. But Giovanna, in full remorse, says, Ah no, perdono. Anna insists, Ah che ascolto, ah perdono, fuggi, fuggi, ah perdono. Tu mia rivale, Dio, when Anna fully understands that Giovanna is the one who will be marrying the king. Tu Seymour, mia rivale. And Giovanna insists, ah, perdono dal mio cor. And this part by Giovanna, ah, perdono dal mio cor, punita io sono, inesperta, lusingata, infelice fui sedotta, inesperta, lusingata, amo Enrico e no rossore a mio supplizio è questo amore, gemo e piango e dal mio pianto soffocato amor non è. This part that is that needs to be carried or sung in full emotion by the mezzo. Gemo e piango e dal mio pianto soffocato amor non è. Gemo e piango dal mio pianto soffocato amor non è soffocato dal mio pianto amor non è. Of course, in this phrase we notice that it is bel canto because you notice the ornaments and the ways it is sung. And there is these interruptions by Anna tu mia rivale. There is these repetitions of piango. Of course, Anna now changed her mood and insists now Fuji, Fuji, Vane, Vane, Fuji, Vane, Fuji, Fuji. Now Anna Bolena says, Sorgi, sorgi, e reo soltanto chi tal fiamma accese in te. Anna insists. L'alza e l'abbraccia, meaning that she has just forgiven Giovanna. Va infelice e te correca il perdono di Bolena, nel mio duel furente cieca ti imprecai terribil pena, la tua grazia or chiedo a Dio e concessa a me sarà. And I would like to give you a little of the rhythm of, because now Anna Bolena's voice has gained power. Remember that she started from a very quiet monologue, and now the understanding and drama that la traditrice is Giovanna, her friend, and now that she has just forgiven, has gained power in her voice and now says, Va infelice te correca il perdono di volere. La 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 this the way this is written is so effective on a stage because now we feel we started from a more slower music and now it's gaining not only volume but also rapidness. In quest'amor la mia pietà, la mia pietà, la mia pietà. And Giovanna, after that quick and more powerful intervention by Anna says, A peggiore il tuo perdono dello sdegno ch'io temea, ponitor la lascia un trono del delitto Dio sonrea, la mia tende un giusto Dio che per me perdono n'ha, a primiero è questo amplesso del tormenti che mi dà. If you notice the rhythm and the way the accent of each of the syllables and phrases is put is similar to the line of singing of Anna. So da 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 da. The duet continues where Anna says infelice, infelice, non sei rea, non sei rea, and Giovanna keeps singing that of Ah, mi attende un giusto Dio. Ah, da, 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 da. In this part, the duet, the voices of Anna and Giovanna are intercalated. One of them, of course, uh, in full desperation of feeling guilty, and the other being the magnanimous queen forgiving her. Of course, by this time, as we are about to see, the duet wraps up with the two of voices. There is usually a change in the way it is sung. It does not follow 100% of what is actually written, but there is a change by the singers because they have to go for the soprano usually goes for a high D and the mezzo usually goes for an A, which are two very high notes. And after having been singing for over 10 minutes, it is almost impossible to do. Da, 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 da. concessame sarà la tua grazia, or chiedo a Dio, la concessame sarà. And then sarà is what the soprano would give her high D and the mezzo would give her high A if they agree to do so. This duet between of the second act uh, between Anna and Giovanna is, from my perspective, one of the most perfect and most dramatic duets ever written in the world of opera, not only for the voice of a soprano and a mezzo, but in the complete world of opera. It allows us to understand how the emotions of Anna evolve from her monologue earlier to the highest top of the drama with those high notes after being singing and understanding the situation along with Giovanna. That's how Maestro Donizetti could build drama, and this is one of the reasons why I say that Maestro Verdi may have seen or saw these productions by Donizetti and said, "This is the way drama has to be told." In the operas, in the Italian operas. Let's go for the second sample that it is going to be in this case from Maria Stuarda, and this is the confrontation scene between the two queens, the Queen of England and the Queen of Scotland, that is Maria Stuarda herself. The two of them are together, and I am going to bring up the topic of the censorship because remember that we are talking about two queens and it is the years 1830s. Now, even in the 2020s, how many people would dare to put persons or people of the royalty as the main characters with all their faults and problems to be presented on stage. Not many people would dare to do that. Maestro Donizetti dared to do that. And when he dared, he also chose a very difficult confrontation scene because he uses words. The first time I heard it and read it, I told myself, oh my God, did Maestro Donizetti really used these words? Look at this. This is a confrontation scene between two queens. I am going to read it first. Maria says, "Parli tu." Sorry. Maria, in fact, the scene starts, well, has started a couple of minutes ago. It has evolved for, but there is a point in time when Maria Stuarda says, "Figlia impura di Bolena, parli tu di disonore, meretrice indegna oscena, in te cada il mio rossore, profanato il solio inglese." And here are the words that I was telling you that I cannot believe that Maestro Donizetti actually wrote. Vil bastarda dal tuo pie. This scene has been so famous, or mainly in the voice of the greatest soprano, Turkish soprano Leyla Gencer, because Maestra Gencer really understood that the drama in this scene was built about these words. Of course, the scene has been evolving, but Maestra Gencer understood that unless you were able to convey the purity of drama in your voice, unless you are able to do that, the scene is going to be effective. If you just do figlia impura di Bolena, parla tu di disonori, meretrice indegna oscena, in te cade il mio rossor. It is not in te cade il mio rossor. It has to be with drama. In te cade il mio rossor. And Leila Gencer, what she does is that she carries, in fact, what she does with the last phrase with vil bastarda dal tuo pie, she actually yells the last word. She doesn't say vil bastarda dal tuo pie. She says vil bastarda dal tuo pie, because the words that she's yelling at Elisabetta are so tremendously dramatic that they have to be believable. If you just say "Vil bastarda dal tuo pie," it doesn't mean anything. You really have to yell it at her. "Vil bastarda dal tuo pie." with full disprezzo. And only when you do that, you understand thereafter, having said that, all the people who are on scene also say, "Oh my Lord, what did she do?" Of course, Elisabetta is very upset, and now she says, "Guardie, hola." The choir, the rest of the people there says, "Quali accenti e la dell'ira giusto ciel, perdutele, perdutele, perdutele." Of course, the scene continues. I was telling you that the way she constructed, Maestro Donizetti, sorry, constructed uh, the complete scenes to wrap up his acts are very effective. From my perspective, Maestro Giuseppe Verdi also learned somehow on the way on how you can wrap up an act and make it effective by looking at how it was done by Maria Stuarda in Maria Stuarda. Uh, of course, in this ensemble, there are all of the voices are joining together, and there is a melody. Ta-ra-ra-ra-ran, 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 ta-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra, ta-ra-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-dun. Ta-da-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. That is the most sticky part of that scene, but we all know because we are watching, and it is very important that you keep in mind that after yelling those words to Elisabetta, and that Elisabetta has asked her guards to imprison Maria, what they have done now is that you picture in your mind that two soldiers, that the two guards, have taken the other queen and now are dragging her to jail. So try to picture that in mind, and while that is happening, you listen to the melody of the choir with the ta da 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 ta da 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 ta da 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 ta da da da. And of course, there are still participation by Elizabeth and by Maria. And what the great Leila Genscher liked to do here was that she would add one of her favorite notes. She was spectacular in singing high E's, and so she went for a high E flat, which is, of course, one of the most spectacular ways of wrapping up an act in an opera. You have a tremendous confrontation scene, you have an incredible choir with great orchestration, and then, with the understanding of operatic drama and theater, Maestra Genscher goes for a high note not even written. So, if you have the opportunity, I would really advise you to look for that confrontation scene recording by Maestra Leila Genscher and go up to the end of the act and notice how perfectly written, composed, and performed is that drama. That wrapping up of the act of Maria Stuarda is perfection in music itself. Just to recall that the scene starts with, remember that it is not to be sung in bel canto sin figlia impura di Bolena. You have to think, figlia impura di Bolena, parli tu di disonore, meretrice indegna scena, in te casa il mio rossore, profanate il sole inglese. It is very important that the accents are put where they need to be put. Because if it is said only il sole inglese, vil bastarda dal tuo pie, vil bastarda dal tuo pie. And that is how Maria Stuarda is composed to provide that full sense of drama. But now let's wrap up today's program with a third example, but we are going to take the very well known Lucia di Lammermoor, because I have been saying that every soprano wants to be Lucia because of La Scena di Follia and because of the Ardorni Incensi and the Sparghi d'Amaro Pianto, but not many people have noticed that there is a very dramatic, and it is a another very good example of how Maestro Donizetti could build drama, and it has to do with the scene where Edgardo learns that Lucia married a different woman. Of course, if you know the plot of Lucia de Lammermoor, then you are aware that Lucia de Lammermoor is around two young guys who want to get married, but Lucia has to marry the party that fits their interests of her brother. So in that scene, the scene of Edgardo, so if you have in mind that scene where he has learned that Lucia has married another man, uh, Edgardo, and for this you need a great tenor, not a great voice. I am not talking about you listening to Franco Corelli, who of course with that powerful spinto voice, but you need a singer who actually understands the importance of drama, the importance of the words, and puts the right emphasis where it belongs. That's why I am using Giuseppe Di Stefano as the example for this scene. If you had the opportunity of listening to one of Maestro Di Stefano's recording on these Lucias, and you go to that scene where he learns about this, and he with really the voice and the heartbroken Edgardo shouts. And remember that we are talking about, from my perspective, the first Italian composer who understood how to build drama, how to build complete scenes around a believable drama, as Maestro Donizetti was. So, in this example, he says, Hai tradito il cielo e amor, Edgardo shouts. You have betrayed heaven and love. And says, Maledetto sia l'istante che di te mi resse amante, stirpe iniqua abominata, io dovea da te fuggir, abominata maledetta, io dovea da te fuggir. Even though there are only six phrases here, these are six phrases that really put together all the angerness, all the way the heart of Edgardo has been broken into pieces in learning that the love of his life has just married a different man. And there, after those six phrases, Edgardo reads a vi disperda. And again, as it is the case in Maria Stuarda, you cannot just say a vi disperda because it is bel canto. You cannot say maledetto sia l'istante che di te mi resi amante, stirpe iniqua abominata, io dovea da te fuggir. It is not that bel canto. It has to convey the drama, insist, convey the drama as Donizetti wrote it, and has to shout it, maledetto sia l'istante. If you notice the emphasis, if you emphasize maledetto sia l'istante instead of just saying maledetto sia l'istante che di te mi re siamante, by just putting the emphasis in the first syllable of these phrases, you understand how the drama is built around that phrase. Che di te mi resi amante, stirpe iniqua abominata, io dovea da te fuggir. Abominata. Just notice how you should be emphasizing. Abominata, maledetta, io dovea da te fuggir. And after you have said, Io dovea da te fuggir, vi disperda. This is also another yell. You are very upset and are trying to somehow punish uh, Lucia on what she has done by yelling at her. Vi disperda. Of course, after this, the same way as in Maria Stuarda is built the finale of that act, where if you notice this sort of conversation builds in parallel as in Maria Stuarda, where Maria has somehow offended the Queen Elisabetta. In this scene, Edgardo has offended Lucia, and after that offense, the choir disapproves, and then also the music and the choir builds together. And if you have seen and you are lucky enough, you have noticed that the sopranos like to wrap up this scene also with a high note that is not written on the score, because that is very effective to do, and that's what naturally comes in the style of Maestro Donizetti. I am hoping that these three examples that I have shared with you on how drama could be built around the operas by Maestro Donizetti are an excellent proof of, I would like to insist one again, of who the first Italian opera composer to build true dramas around the story is here, Maestro Gaetano Donizetti.